Enteleshi. Verse 1, Chapter 15. Gathering supplies for winter. The air around them was crisp and cool, much colder than they had felt before since coming here to this era. It seemed like fall was approaching. They needed to prepare for winter soon. Omega glanced toward Tricera standing nearby, watching him curiously. He smiled, pointing his head in the direction of the bot base camp. She tilted hers slightly and nodded. "I think she's on to something," Rex said. "Let's get there first." Omega chuckled internally. Petera flapped its wings, rising higher into the air. "We'll need to gather enough wood before the first snowfall." Omega's eyes darted towards Bronto. Even though they were unable to talk like them yet, somehow, he could understand what was happening better than many of the others. Maybe it had something to do with how well they understood each other instinctively. That thought gave him another idea. "Rex, what do you say we go hunting?" "But..." The young T-Rex perked up, jumping from the ground excitedly. Tricera let out a rumble of approval next to him. If anything would motivate him to push himself harder, it'd be the chance for a hunt. "Okay. Rebuilder, you know the area better than anyone else right now." "Vah! I'll help you both gather some large logs too," Steggy volunteered. It didn't take long until their little group reached the clearing just outside the bot base, which had been turned into the home for various other dinosaurs over recent weeks. There wasn't much space left, so more might need to move out if they wanted to save room for anything larger than what currently lived here. For now, however, everything appeared settled, and they knew most creatures wouldn't hibernate for months once things started getting colder. With that plan established, they split off again. The T-Rexes headed to the east along the river to try catching fish or maybe even finding game deeper inland. Meanwhile, Rebuilder stayed behind near the campsite, beginning the process of chopping down trees. Once those tasks were completed, or even before, the rest of them spread out across the surroundings, looking for additional supplies they might require during winter. Petera scoured the skies, spotting anything unusual or noteworthy worth taking note of. Omega took up position among the forest itself, scouting possible locations for traps, or perhaps hiding places from incoming threats, which hopefully wouldn't happen during the cold season. At least not too often. After a few hours, Rebuilder had amassed quite a heaping pile of logs alongside various smaller branches suitable for starting fires. Steggy assisted with arranging it all neatly and carefully to avoid accidents. They'd been practicing this lately so they could light small bonfires without setting themselves ablaze. Just then, Petera swooped overhead with Rex and Tricera hot on its trail. They skidded to a halt before them. "We caught 2 big ones!" Rex proudly exclaimed while pointing backward. Indeed, 2 massive corpses lay sprawled near the edge of their forest territory. From the distance, they looked almost like some kind of antelope, although bigger and likely tastier judging from Rex's enthusiasm. "Great job! We're going to have plenty of meat stored away after skinning those guys." As Omega spoke, Rebuilder began lumbering over toward the carcasses. The duo quickly joined them, eagerly tearing apart the flesh of their kills despite having recently eaten. Afterward, they'd probably need some downtime to digest it all before going again, especially considering how big and tough the beasts were compared to their usual prey size. Still, at least they got a nice haul today. Omega gazed up into the sky, shielding his senses from bright sunlight reflecting off clouds. "What's wrong?" Rex asked aloud. Something feels weird. His systems analyzed thousands of variables based upon data collected throughout the day, and all signs pointed toward the same conclusion. Something else was coming. No, multiple somethings. However, the exact location remained hazy under his scans. Rebuilder, he called out mentally. Gather up whatever's left over and start bringing it closer to our camp. Just leave some scrap for those two to play with. All right. Yeah! The bot marched forward obediently while he continued scanning with his own optics and the network of hidden drones scattered across the surroundings. Within minutes, he confirmed his suspicions. 4 different groups approached rapidly, one from directly west of their base, another east past the riverbanks, and 2 additional packs moving perpendicular to those paths, all converging inward like predators stalking prey. These were no ordinary herds either. Each contained a dozen species mixed together without any recognizable hierarchy. Unlike any behavior seen thus far among uncorrupted fauna, some moved awkwardly while others veered sharply in unpredictable directions. His mind went blank as the implications hit him hard. This isn't normal. Those weren't regular migrating herds or wandering creatures exploring unknown territories. These movements displayed clear indicators of intelligent coordination, yet lacked any semblance of structure or purpose besides heading straight here. If one considered them individually, each appeared disoriented, some limping with visible wounds, some bearing scars matching patterns found on remains from prior attacks. But together, acting synchronized with singular intent, targeting their location. The hairs on the back of his armor stood on end as chills crept across his system. It can't be. Not already. It hasn't even been half a year since the drop. Surely. Warning. Multiple enemy sightings identified approximately 7 kilometers south-southeast. Recommend all units return to bot base immediately. He announced via intercom. Everyone present acknowledged his alert. Even Rex froze mid-bite, sensing the gravity. Rebuilder arrived alongside a growing pile of stripped bones and raw flesh. Is that bad? He asked innocently. Clearly, he hadn't grasped the severity. How long before those guys show up? Tricera grumbled lowly. Give me 5 minutes. He began assessing all available defenses, positioning mini-drones strategically around their perimeter. Their energy reserves wouldn't hold forever, but if timed correctly, could cause chaos when deployed properly. Perhaps he should set up some simple caltrops or spikes here and there too. No sign of Spino, he muttered. That worried him, because he'd always been one of the stronger ones, while the chances of him appearing here were slim compared to the others. Who knows what else lurked beneath the surface? Suddenly, several loud crashes sounded from further afield. A cacophony erupting from the forest border. Twigs snapped violently, followed shortly thereafter by heavy footsteps thudding steadily, shaking the earth underneath them. It didn't take long for figures to appear through the tree line. First, 2 ankylosauruses lumbered forth, their club-like tails whipping wildly side to side. Next emerged 6 Compsognathus, scurrying about chaotically while yowling constantly. Then came a pair of Tyrannosaurus rexes. However, unlike their friends back at camp, who acted similar to living beings possessed full control over actions, these specimens moved erratically, as if held captive inside shells forced onward by pure aggression alone. As such, they could exploit certain gaps in attack patterns easier. In addition to the initial 4 groups closing in, it detected 3 more emerging from opposite sides of the lake. Combined numbers swelled upwards, reaching 70 individuals altogether. A decent force. Not completely insurmountable. Granted, they took careful steps. But far worse news awaited him when analyzing their composition with greater clarity. The original pack led by Ankies consisted primarily of slower-moving herbivores such as Edmontosaurus, Maias aura, Parasaurolophus. Though lacking offensive capabilities, these monsters presented excellent shields against direct assaults due to sheer mass alone. Second contingent arrived composed mainly raptors. Nearly identical to those witnessed earlier, except sporting minor differences, including lighter hues across scales. Nothing significant enough to impact fight outcomes significantly. Finally, the most concerning faction, carnivorous giants. 3 separate Tyrannosaurus species charged recklessly straight toward bot base camp. Rex's kin plus 2 other types previously unseen. Both newcomers towered significantly taller than their companions and carried heavily armored skulls reinforced by prominent brow ridges, projecting outward like natural battering rams. One boasted an elongated snout lined with jagged teeth, while the second sported a shorter face filled, mostly blunt fangs idealized for crushing bone, rather slicing soft tissue efficiently. If they decided working together, instead randomly attacking anything entering their sights, they pose substantial threat even against entire army. Not to mention dozens smaller fry tagging along like personal bodyguards, providing constant distractions and harassment to wear down enemies slowly without putting themselves at risk whatsoever. They look pissed. Rex uttered quietly beside him, while eyeing approaching monstrosities cautiously. Truthfully, worse than pissed. Corrupt ones seemed absolutely deranged, barely resembling sentient beings capable rational thoughts. Simply vessels driven insane rage fueled exclusively by endless hunger. Stay close to me, he commanded calmly before turning toward Rebuilder, standing slightly apart. The doors will open momentarily. Once inside, lock them until it's clear. Don't come out unless you see someone familiar, or hear me say otherwise. Ah! He complied wordlessly, slinking back gradually toward relative safety offered by walls. Meanwhile, remaining crew members formed loose defensive line before main entrance, awaiting imminent confrontation with horde barreling ever closer. His optic sensors focused in on primary targets. Those gigantic tyrannosaurs rampaging onwards unrelentingly regardless obstacles encountered. No longer did their usual caution hinder movement speeds. Instincts overwhelmed completely by primal fury filling every fiber being. Vicious maws gaped wide while arms lashed outward violently whenever colliding objects happened happenstance. One unfortunate tree trunk buckled entirely under sheer force generated by passing arm swing, splintering pieces, scattering in all directions, harmlessly, thanks limited reach. Yet mere glimpse at power unleashed sent distinct chill down spine, knowing this very strength used once upon a time for sheer destruction without pause until nothing left standing anymore whatsoever. Ankylosauruses weren't slowed considerably either, despite carrying extra weight-attached armor plating covering torsos. Those massive tails dragged across soil, kicking up clouds, dirt whenever swung sideways, yet maintained momentum perfectly fine. No doubt they'd smash through anything standing in their way with ease too. While they posed immediate physical danger, Raptor contingent proved potentially deadliest aspect overall. Tenacity, paired lightning-quick reflexes meant dealing damage without receiving retaliation difficult. Furthermore, if situation deteriorated badly enough, those nimble killers could attempt circle around flanks, catching them off guard completely. especially problematic if reinforcements kept pouring forth endlessly. Fortunately, Rebuilder finished locking gate behind him, just seconds before closest herd slammed squarely into fortified door. Entire construct trembled momentarily while thick metal groaned ominously under tremendous pressure applied externally. Took everything within himself, resist, urge, flee instantaneously. They had nowhere safer hide anyway aside this place. Hold steady! He shouted over comlink, aimed strictly internal channels only, keeping external sensors locked tight. Omega is preparing countermeasure package now. Wait for command. Don't fire unless attacked directly. Several tense seconds passed, feeling eternity stretch indefinitely. Meanwhile, he hastily assembled handful mini-drone constructs, equipping them various tiny blades and sharp spikes capable piercing thick hides easily, if applied effectively at vulnerable spots underneath chins. Meanwhile, remaining personnel shifted positions subtly, allowing optimal coverage from potential angles. Soon enough, pounding sounds intensified dramatically outside, confirming all invaders had successfully gathered around entry point, attempting force breakthrough simultaneously. Door frame twisted visibly under relentless barrage, yet miraculously held intact somehow, thanks robust materials combined clever engineering design. Even so, constant vibrations produced unsettling ringing sensation deep within auditory receptors, driving maddening headaches straight into optical cluster. Almost done. Final touches added pair of miniature explosive grenades to each unit for finishing moves. Nothing excessively powerful, really. Merely concentrated bursts enough stun even largest target momentarily, granting sufficient window strike vital areas. Everyone get ready. Now! Without warning, he launched drones upward through small holes atop walls disguised as simple drainage vents nobody knew existed besides them. Each device released upon activation buzzed around erratically as programmed before locating preferred striking points, descending suddenly to inflict calculated wounds. Unfortunately, sheer number opponents overwhelmed even those efforts pretty handily. More importantly, raptors began scaling barrier walls with alarming speed. Clearly, they sensed weakness somewhere else, despite not seeing opening physically present yet. Time ran out swiftly. Engage! Twin bolts streaked forward, precisely hitting marks located on exposed throats of nearest ankylosises, while Rebuilder opened inner gates partway, unleashing volley of rapid shots straight into oncoming mob. Flashes lit up night, briefly revealing. Twisted shapes writhing uncontrollably, amidst billowing smoke plumes rising from bodies littered ground all around. Chaos erupted abruptly without warning. Rebuilder's projectiles tore through flesh effortlessly, leaving smoking craters wherever impacts occurred, while drones whizzed overhead indiscriminately. Despite losses suffered, Swarm pressed onwards undeterred, trampling own fallen allies carelessly beneath clawed feet. Single-minded focus, destroying everything before them. Fragments of scale, muscle tissue flew everywhere alongside fresh blood sprayed, liberally staining surrounding soil dark red pools. Instinctively, he raised shield arm blocking majority droplets impacting directly against outer platework. Shattered bones crunched wetly as various creatures slipped on slick surfaces, trying evade incoming strikes, only to lose balance, completely sliding helplessly toward inevitable demise. Yet none mattered, because now, finally, they'd entered range. Bursts of electrical arcs shot outward rapidly, seeking nearest living targets. Initial wave targeted ankle joints, forcing many to tumble awkwardly, while smaller predators yelped shrilly. Temporarily blinded pain, searing through nerves. Larger specimens simply shrugged off injuries, stoically continuing advance, unhindered until... Wait, what the hell? Rebuilder whispered through audio channel, noticing strange occurrence occurring directly behind main doorway. He was referring sudden appearance trio figures emerging unexpectedly from shadows. Doubt gripped chest tightly. Number. Sure enough, there stood Spino, flanked both sides by unfamiliar velociraptor variants. Bigger, bulkier, definitely not native around here. Their movements exhibited subtle differences compared others witnessed recently. Slower, methodical, almost cautious, despite lack expression facial features whatsoever. Can they use tools? Rebuilder's voice rang hollow with shock, reverberating behind helmet visor. That's impossible. Not yet, he corrected mentally. But give them time. At close glance, neither raptor sibling bore notable visual differences distinguishable from previous encounters besides sheer size increase, especially evident on males who matched Rex almost identically in terms muscular development, only lacked distinctive blue markings across backs denoting belonging specific clan lineage. Female maintained equally imposing stature without compromising femininity curves, subtly emphasized beneath thin layer scales protecting sensitive underbelly region. Interestingly, both pairs appeared healthier comparatively speaking, carrying no visible scars or wounds like most corrupted specimens observed thus far. How are they talking? Rex piped up beside him, equally perplexed. I don't know. Honestly didn't want answer either because it couldn't mean anything good coming from them. Unless... They learned quickly. Pyrrha breathed incredulously. Suddenly, realization dawned across multiple minds simultaneously. Our children, our friends. They're communicating with them. All previous attempts establishing connection failed miserably because they communicated primarily through sounds frequencies exceeding human hearing limits. Same issue plaguing modern dolphins apparently. A detail Echo discovered researching marine mammals while waiting travel here. No, amount artificial hearing aids, aided understanding, nor translation software provided useful insights whatsoever. Until now, apparently. Because somehow, Spino figured method bypassing traditional barriers, either deliberately learning specific vocalization patterns, imitating gestures common amongst tribe members, or possibly developing telepathic links functioning similarly reptilian brain functions observed earlier experiments conducted upon lower primates. Whichever case applicable changed everything entirely. If this particular specimen developed intelligence surpassing levels believed achievable naturally during prehistoric eras, we are severely screwed. I whispered. Then it dawned upon me. Of course, how did I forget? Human language. The reason Spino hadn't bothered with us sooner. He knew English. Or rather, absorbed vast amounts knowledge regarding technology directly from the oceanic entity manipulating his thoughts before arrival here. Given its unfathomable intellect controlling countless aquatic organisms simultaneously without difficulty whatsoever, capturing human language proved trivial, especially considering hundreds years exposure interacting numerous cultures worldwide during its reign across Earth. For whatever reasons, though, maybe pride or simply apathy, he'd kept abilities secret intentionally while feigning ignorance until circumstances warranted reveal. Now everything clicked into place suddenly, including why certain phrases spoken repeatedly triggered strange reactions among corrupted wildlife. And the fact they'd finally chosen this exact moment to reveal themselves wasn't mere coincidence either. It implied careful planning, strategizing involving cooperation, multiple entities operating independently, yet coordinating synchronously somehow. Which begged terrifying question. Could they coordinate activities on scale affecting global politics too? Was everything we've experienced so far simply elaborate setup designed to manipulate perception? Play games within confines limited consciousnesses trapped inside outdated bodies. How far did they go exploiting vulnerabilities inherent within biological structures? Too many questions without satisfactory answers loomed large before me. None welcome. At moment, nonetheless. Are they actually talking? Rex asked tentatively as the three creatures strode forward casually, seemingly unfazed by ongoing chaos surrounding them. Yes, I replied grimly. Get ready, everybody! Immediately afterward, I lunged directly toward Trio, accompanied by Rex matching pace perfectly alongside me while Rebuilder provided cover, firing wild sporadic bursts towards anything approaching within danger zones. Thankfully, Majority Corruption stumbled blindly around confused, disoriented drone blasts earlier, causing temporary disruption within ranks. Still, it wouldn't last, especially given Spinny, now actively directing forces coordinating attacks. Hey, boys! Rex called out cheerfully despite dire circumstance. Immediately noticed odd choice words usage, but decided ignore it temporarily, since bigger issues demanded attention presently. Both velociraptors stared intently, clearly recognizing Presence Companion despite wearing robotic shell masking underlying organic parts. Neither reacted hostile manner whatsoever. Simply observed silently from afar. Unmoved, even occasional stray shots ricocheted overhead, narrowly missing marks. Only Spinosaurus paid attention truly, yellow slit pupils narrowing dangerously as jaws clamped shut firmly. You are unwelcome guests, he growled menacingly. We're not your enemy. I countered evenly, refusing rise, provocation thrown, casually hoping gain, incite intentions lurking beneath facade hostility. It doesn't matter what you say. His tone softened marginally, betraying slight hesitation, flicker across armored faceplate concealing expressions beneath. So, you're aware of our existence. Then... Spinosaurus hesitated a heartbeat longer before responding curtly. Yes, your machines aren't concealed very well. You know, especially those obnoxious lights flashing randomly like mating calls. And yet you chose now to approach instead of earlier, correct? He challenged him further. Why wait until all of us together, instead of picking us off separately? His beady eyes widened fractionally in surprise, followed by furious twitch tail. Clearly hadn't expected such boldness challenged directly. Why? Why do you ask why? The same reason why we exist. My gaze locked his own intensifying stare. Unafraid, stand firm without backing down. Curiosity. Doesn't matter. You're in my home. Thus, he snarled loudly while snapping teeth dangerously mere inches separating helmets. If hadn't jerked backwards slightly at precise moment, likely lost head entirely. His bite force measured at roughly 15,000 pounds per second core inch, even without aid tech enhancements currently augmenting strength greatly. Behind him, however, Rex tensed muscles visibly preparing. Entelechy, Versa One, Chapter 16. Discovery of the Predators. Omega's days at Shadow Valley turned peaceful again after their first clash. They spent most evenings enjoying warm meals cooked over the bonfire. Meals usually courtesy of Rebuilder, who had gotten quite skilled with the fire pit. On those nights, they learned how each species enjoyed its leisure activities. Bronto seemed content, munching leaves and staring blankly off into space, though she did occasionally lean down to rub her head affectionately against someone when approached. Steggy, meanwhile, spent much of his downtime polishing his plates with sand. For some reason, this delighted both Pera and Bronto immensely, causing them to laugh uncontrollably whenever he started in. For the most part, Trisera seemed happiest just hanging out, whether engaging in conversation or napping beside them. The young Rex showed a more energetic side, often joining Terra for flying lessons in the mornings and tagging along with Omega during resource-gathering sessions. And Omega scouting drones! Well, Omega had set up several small ones throughout the valley perimeter as security cameras. Each day, Omega accessed them remotely to see everything was fine. But today, something strange happened. They went dark right around dawn without any apparent cause. All 6 simultaneously shut off, leaving no visual feed whatsoever. Omega tried rebooting them manually, yet none would respond. Not even the emergency overrides. This worried Omega because it meant they'd lost sight of whatever was happening outside. The rest of the morning passed uneventfully until midday, when a chorus of distant roars echoed across the landscape. The sounds carried unmistakable tones of danger and aggression. Triceras immediately rose to protect Rex. Patera shot straight upward, wings flapping rapidly. Bronto let loose a panicked bellow. Even Steggy dropped his self-cleaning regimen. Everyone relax, Omega instructed calmly. It could be anything. We should check it out, Rex said firmly. Just in case. His words were met with unanimous agreement among the others. They wanted answers too. So, with caution, they ventured deeper into the valley's interior to investigate, keeping close formation. Scanning ahead with radar helped confirm Omega's suspicions. Multiple life signs moving fast and approaching them quickly. How many? Rex asked anxiously. Hard to tell exactly with foliage interference, but more than 10? Maybe 15, based on heat signatures. As they neared a large cluster of trees, faint shapes began coming into focus. Whatever creatures approached, they moved swiftly through the forest floor debris. Closer inspection revealed reptilian silhouettes and distinctive tails swinging behind them. Suddenly, a cacophony of snarls filled the air. They're here! Huh! Who? I don't know, but judging by the way they're snapping their jaws, it doesn't look good. Omega's sensors picked up movement from every direction now, surrounding them on all sides. These weren't your typical grazing herbivores. Whatever species surrounded them, they numbered at least 20 individuals, maybe more, and closed in fast. Some remained hidden behind trees, skulking low to the ground, while others circled openly around open areas. Based on the sheer volume, their only choice was strategic positioning. Fortunately, the dense thicket offered some natural barriers to funnel incoming foes toward them. With weapons ready, the 5 of them spread out to prepare for inevitable contact. Omega's systems calculated potential attack vectors and marked hotspots along the front line. To maximize coverage, Omega launched the remaining mini-drone from the shoulder holster. It buzzed overhead, and locked onto multiple targets, streaming footage directly to the others via holopads embedded into wristbands, Rebuilder provided. Seconds felt like minutes. And finally, a rustle sounded nearby, followed by several shadows stepping into the clearing. "Watch it!" With a roar, one lunged directly toward Triceras from her left flank. She swung both arms wide in retaliation, smashing it square in the face. But a second leapt over Bronto's back and dove towards Rex. Its tail whipped violently side to side as it raced forward, exposing rows of sharp teeth. Luckily, a burst of energy fire from Omega's forearm caught it mid-air, sending it crashing hard into the dirt. More followed shortly thereafter. More of them than anticipated. They moved like wolves hunting prey, circling methodically while picking their openings for attacks. A few even climbed branches overhead to assault from elevated positions. These attackers reminded Omega of lions seen stalking antelopes. Except here, there were far fewer antelopes. In the chaos, Rex managed to dodge a charging predator but stumbled backward instead of rolling safely away. As a result, another struck at his exposed leg. Thankfully, Pera swooped down and grabbed it by the tail, pulling the creature away forcefully. Bronto stepped forward cautiously, lowering her neck enough for Rex to climb atop for better height advantage. He gripped tightly and gave a quick nod, showing trust in her protection ability despite having little prior experience riding anything living. Then things really got intense. At this point, Omega's scanners showed another dozen creatures closing in, plus additional movement from deeper inside the forest canopy. They used trees as cover to launch surprise ambushes without warning. Tricera's powerful horn spikes proved vital as she swatted away anyone foolish enough to get too close. Her charge technique left quite an impression, especially when she rammed directly into a tree trunk while spinning sideways, nearly crushing an enemy against bark. Rebuilder assisted by casting makeshift spears outward from nearby rocks, impaling a few unfortunate pursuers as they jumped in recklessly. Even Steggy demonstrated some defensive skill. While he didn't possess physical abilities equal to Triceratops' size or speed, his unique skin texture offered surprising resistance against claws and bite attempts. Whenever a foe latched onto his legs attempting to trip him, dozens of tiny scales shifted automatically to form a barrier, ejecting intruders away. But it wasn't easy. They faced overwhelming numbers and limited firepower compared to earlier fights. As expected from apex predators, these guys knew how to fight dirty too, diving repeatedly while lashing tails wildly behind them, forcing them to dodge constantly while fending off repeated strikes. Their coordinated tactics combined sloppy hit-and-run strategies with ruthless precision attacks, yet a tactic they'd likely developed over generations. And frankly speaking, the entire situation reminded Omega of past missions alongside humans. If they hoped to survive against these opponents, they couldn't rely solely on brute force. No, these guys played rougher games. One instance, while trying to shake a persistent pursuer clinging fiercely to Omega's hip joint, suddenly Omega heard a low rumble rising behind them. Without turning fully around, Omega fired blindly backwards, striking something solid but unseen immediately afterward. Whirling around, Omega found the culprit sprawled awkwardly beneath them. A third attacker, who somehow managed to sneak silently underneath cover from an elevated position overhead. Damn it, Omega thought they scanned for enemies everywhere? That realization hit them hard. Clearly, They'd adapted ways to hide even from thermal imaging, probably blending naturally into surroundings thanks to fur patterns similar to Earth's big cats. From then onward, nobody dared step anywhere carelessly anymore. Every shadow required scrutiny, lest they risk ending up with more unwanted guests underfoot. And so, they proceeded warily through heavy brush while scanning constantly for additional traps. All the same, despite this added awareness, fatigue slowly crept in as the sun arced higher in the sky. By early afternoon, everyone seemed drained, and the relentless pursuit gradually wore them down. Though nobody mentioned weakness aloud, Omega noticed clear changes in their movements. Bronto breathed heavily from exhaustion, while Petera visibly struggled staying airborne consistently long periods, forced to descend periodically to catch breath before resuming flight. Steggy moved sluggishly at points, even stumbling slightly at times, his normal poised demeanor replaced temporarily by visible weariness from constant evasions. Meanwhile, Triceras continued defending ferociously regardless of personal limits. Whenever an opponent charged her flank, she'd pivot sharply without hesitation, slamming horns dead on at every target within range. She was amazing to watch, but equally concerning. At that rate, she risked injury herself, pushing her body well past normal endurance thresholds for sustained periods without proper breaks. We need backup plan. Pronto. Omega whispered quietly via intercom link so others wouldn't overhear unnecessary panic. Rebuilder's voice crackled over comms next, carrying faint static distortion amidst sounds of background footsteps crunching gravel. Agreed. Can try repelling them back. Create safe distance. Regroup. You've got something, Omega asked hopefully, knowing his analytical mind excelled precisely at last-minute solutions like this one. Negative. Came the disappointing reply. But perhaps use terrain itself. Disrupt pursuit routes. He explained carefully, emphasizing importance each word without slowing pace. In practical terms, this basically translated to make stuff fall on top of them. Not an ideal strategy against mobile threats accustomed to rapid maneuvering, yet worth exploring if desperate. Details. I probed, expecting specifics soonest possible. The rock formations along this path have weak points. If properly leveraged, he clarified hurriedly while glancing behind momentarily. And placed strategically, they might obstruct certain avenues of approach, allowing them temporary reprieve. This could work. Especially if timed perfectly to give us breathing room while creating confusion among pack members behind. However, executing successfully required perfect coordination between us. So how do they actually drop these rocks? That depends, interrupted Steggy unexpectedly, on size and shape. But if they manage to dislodge them correctly, gravity takes over. Fair point. Once loose, the weight alone would prove sufficient leverage to topple obstacles without direct manual assistance. But won't this trap them more easily? Warned Triceras. What if they surround faster? A calculated risk. Confirmed rebuilder. If they time it well, collapsing debris will give them window escape. Besides, worst-case scenario means they buy themselves extra seconds at best. Worth attempt if gets nasty. Nobody argued that. After all, our options steadily dwindled by minute, while attackers showed no signs letting up anytime soon. All right, go for it. Everyone else focus evasion while he works. Ha! Soon afterwards, Rebuilder veered sharply toward nearest cliff wall, heaving enormous stones aside effortlessly with built-in drills extending from his hands. Dusk clouds billowed behind him, masking progress partially while drawing attention away intentionally to distract others. Within seconds, he succeeded, loosening multiple huge slabs overhead. These began wobbling precariously back and forth, barely suspended from vertical edges by thin layers of soil holding them upright. I watched nervously, hoping he knew exactly what he's doing. Ready? Muthor! Yes, called Bronto loudly, pounding footprints deliberately to mimic weight shifting behind. Dressaraza joined instantly afterwards, grunting rhythmically. Meanwhile, Rex stomped ground harder near one pile opposite, adding urgency to proceedings while Pera hovered high above, observing wider perspective visually. Once steady pounding grew louder behind us, Rebuilder signaled to start dropping debris. Now! Oh! Instantly, several giant rocks plunged simultaneously from ledges above. They crashed thunderously onto path behind, kicking up massive clouds of dust which completely obscured pursuing enemies for crucial seconds. While they scrambled to regain bearing, Rebuilder cast mini-spears directly into smoke-filled gaps, pinning several confused creatures trapped temporarily. To take full advantage, however, timing was key. Seconds stretched into eternity while waiting confirmation each spear struck home correctly. When finally signals confirmed impacts registered via kinetic feedback indicators, they immediately broke formation and sprinted forward full throttle, putting maximum distance between them and now disoriented opposition. Unfortunately, the reprieve lasted mere moments. Soon enough, scattered noises returned from woods around, followed closely by frustrated roars echoing through forest canopy directly ahead. Their foes clearly recovered faster than intended, though the short delay did allow them some valuable room to maneuver. They ran through tangled vines and undergrowth at blinding speeds, weaving between various landmarks along valley floor without clear stopping point planned ahead, eventually reaching safer territory near riverbank edge, where currents prevented close proximity engagement opportunities. They collapsed collectively onto muddy slopes to catch breaths,